It is the perfect, cozy evening for a journaling session, and that is exactly what we are going to be doing. I have set the mood. I've got a cozy cup of tea, and it is in my new mug that I just thrifted, and I'm quite proud of because this was only $3. And just look how beautiful. Look at the shape of it. Look at this handle. It's like made of ceramic as well. This beautiful floral design. I could not be more thrilled. And did I mention $3? $3. That is what I paid for this mug. So this is my pride and joy right now, along with the Princess House lamp that I thrifted as well and is now proudly in my little tea kettle display down in the dining room. So very, very happy with my thrift finds today. And what better way to end a day of thrifting than by cozying up inside to journal. No, Jeannie. What? And now if you're chewing that, they're not going to be able to hear me. Okay, one second. I'll give it back to you in a bit. No, I'll give it back to you. No, I'll give it back to you in a minute. You need to wait. You need to wait. Go away. All right, go get it. Well, this is going well. This is going really well. All right, so we have the dog calmed down. We have the cup of tea. We've got candles lit. We've got the mood lighting, and it is super like windy and stormy outside. We've got comfy clothes on, and yes, we have the journal. So we have everything we need to have the most cozy, wonderful evening of journaling. It's actually been so long since I've set aside an entire evening for journaling, and it already feels so good. But because it's been so long, this is really a catch-up journaling session. I feel very behind in certain journals that I typically try to keep up with, if you will. And the biggest one for me right now is my travel journal. I have been very fortunate to have gone on some incredible trips in the last 2 years. But because of that, I also want to document them really well. And I just have not really had the time to do so. And so now I'm multiple trips behind in my journaling. I'm sure many of you can relate to this phenomenon of feeling behind in your journaling, feeling like you're perpetually trying to keep up with it. And it's a big reason why I've transitioned a lot of my journaling to monthly journaling. You can learn more about that here on my channel. But there are certain journals that I still want to have separate from that. And one of them is my travel journal. So that is what I'm going to work on today. I am going to try and do as much catching up in this travel journal as I can over the next few hours of journaling. That is my only focus. It's my only task. And so what I did yesterday, because I knew I wanted to have this session, is that I actually went through all of my photos from my Grand Canyon trip, which was so long ago. We did that trip in November of 2024. So we are nearly a year out from that trip, and I have not documented it yet. So I went through all of the photos and I made my collages of the photos in the Pic Collage app. That is how I print photos for my journaling. I'll have an entire video on that in the future, so do subscribe to my channel if that interests you. And then I also have all of the ephemera and mementos from that trip saved in this bag, so that is all gathered. I have my travel journal sticker collection already available to me and printed out. I have tons of other materials that I'm sure we'll dig into as well. But the point is that I went ahead and figured out what materials I might want to use for these entries and got them out ahead of time. So make sure you do that step first to make it an extra smooth process when you actually sit down and are ready to journal. So I'm gonna have one more sip of tea and I'm going to print out my photos and then we are going to start journaling. So still printing, and I can't stress enough how important it is. Look at Jean, she's so cute. I can't stress enough how important it is to put your paper in the right way and make sure that you have the right paper and the right printer settings. That is something I will talk about in my upcoming video about printing, but this is what happens when it's the wrong paper or you put the paper in backwards. This is supposed to be on the luster setting, and I put the luster paper in backwards on this particular sheet. So this is the luster side, and this is the regular paper side. And you can see how much ink was just wasted. It kind of is like a pretty design almost like a watercolor look. I think that's supposed to be a photo of the two of us. Very abstract now, but yeah. PSA, what's that called? Yeah, public service announcement, PSA. Put your paper in the right way. All right, I'm already on my second cup of tea and we haven't even started journaling. But here is my travel journal, and I have it in this beautiful cover by Documented Journey. She makes the most beautiful cork covers, and then on the inside it has this floral design. Highly recommend her journal covers. And then inside here I have a B5 Moleskin dot grid notebook. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend the Moleskin brand as much as I used to in the past. So that's the journal I'm using, but I wouldn't say it's like the one I'd recommend because the paper is thinner and I know a lot of people don't care for that. I do have the photos all printed and cut out, and that is what is usually one of those most time consuming pieces. So here they all are. Look at all of these. So many photos. I actually wish that I maybe didn't make as big of collages using as many photos so that I had more big photos, because some of them I think are smaller than I would want them to be for my travel journal style of entries. But honestly, they're already printed, so I'm just not gonna let that bother me. I always like to start a new trip in my travel journal with a cover page. So a really great tip if you're trying to do some catch up is let the photo speak for itself and maybe just add some text for a caption or a title and use that as the entire entry. You don't even need to add a ton of embellishment. I might put a sticker or two on this entry, but we're going to get this one done super quickly because it's really just going to be the photos. I'm in St. Augustine right now. Oh my gosh, I really am just a mess today. Shoot. No, 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 no. I just spilled my tea all over the place, including on my photos. So right now, as you saw, the desk is just covered with drying photos. And I think what I'm gonna do is just call it a night. We didn't even journal. As you can see, the video is longer because we're gonna come back tomorrow and journal. I think that's what I need to do. And I don't know what the lesson is here, other than it's also okay to just accept when it's not your night. Uh, and to also take the little wins because, yes, I did not get a ton of journaling done tonight, but I did all the prep work. So I went through all my photos, I printed them, I cut them out, and I also did go through the other materials that I have, so they're all ready to go. So that just means I can have an even more productive journaling session tomorrow, maybe with my tea sitting a little bit further away from all of the materials I want to use. But it's already 9:10, and I think I just want to read and go to bed. So I will see you again tomorrow evening with my dry photos, maybe some reprinted photos, and we are going to journal. That is going to happen in this video. So I will see you in just a second, and it will be tomorrow. Just kidding. It's not tomorrow. It's actually been a few days since I last sat down to journal. This was a crazy work week, and I just haven't had any time in the evenings. And you probably maybe can tell I got my hair cut since then. Yeah, it definitely looks a little bit better in this portion of the video. So for those who stuck around, enjoy. But alas, it is now Saturday, and I am at my desk again with my tea, which I am going to be keeping way back here for the duration of my journaling, far away from my photos. But I am very glad to report that the photos actually look completely fine. Once the back's all dried, it's like nothing happened. So highly recommend the Koala brand of photo paper, and it might also have to do with the ink. So using the EcoTank printer, I don't know, but the fact is that I spilled tea all over these photos, and they are completely fine today and are still usable. So really good in terms of having photos that you can actually, depend on staying good quality over the years without being damaged by things like little spills that happen. So I am going to try and get some journaling done. This is going to be very much a journal with me session where I'm going to just have it overhead. I am going to have a nice enjoyable evening to myself. So I'm going to be drinking my tea. I'm going to be just quietly getting as many pages done as I can, just very focused without interrupting myself to talk to the camera a ton. So my plan is to just do a voiceover, sharing with you some tips on what I'm doing, and then also some tips on just catch up journaling and having a nice evening of journaling for yourself. But one of the tips for having a nice evening is to just tune everything else out and enjoy it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have the camera overhead. I'm going to put a show or some YouTube channels that I enjoy on my iPad to watch in the background as I go, and we are going to see how many pages we can get done. For this journaling session, I picked up exactly where I left off, which was with the cover page. And as you saw, the only thing I had done before I spilled my tea all over the place was put these two swatches of color on the page. And the idea was to create a background highlight that I then would write over for the teeniest bit of journaling for this cover entry. And then I also did use a sticker from this great set that I found on Amazon. I'll have it linked in my Amazon storefront. There are so many wonderful phrases that I use again and again in all of my different forms of journaling. And then I wrote my journaling of just basically saying that this trip was about visiting the lowest point in Arizona and also the highest point. So we went to the Grand Canyon and we also went to Humphreys Peak, the highest mountain in Arizona. Now, the night that I spilled my tea all over the place, you'll remember I also had some photo printing issues, and I thought before I went to bed that I wouldn't waste that ink and I would try to see what would happen if I experimented and kind of smushed that ink onto a page in my journal. And I figured if it turned out really bad, I could just put a paper over it. Now, I will say it did not turn out great. I had a higher vision for what it would look like putting that color from the ink onto the page, and it ended up kind of just blending all together and making a gray mess. But I wanted to roll with it, and it actually encouraged me to create a whole background effect that would be very abstract, looking like the colors of the Grand Canyon. And I got out these Spectrum watercolors that I've had sitting around forever and never ever use. And so, in some ways, it turned into a happy accident because by trying to fix the mistake, if you will, it encouraged me to be even more creative about how I would approach this entry. If I hadn't done that, I probably would have just taped the photos onto the page, put a sticker down, and called it a day. But this actually made me get more creative and have fun with some of my art supplies, which frankly, I sometimes am feeling so overwhelmed by journaling and wanting to do catch up journaling in a form where I just get as many pages done, which means doing the bare minimum. But this actually is an important tip that even as you are catch up journaling, you can kind of pick and choose when you want to just be quick and put the photo down and write a little entry and call it a day, and when you want to be more creative and actually play and experiment. And I would encourage you to still do that even in your catch up journaling sessions. Choose a page to just get a little bit more extra with and have more creativity and experimentation and see what happens, even if it does take a little bit more time to do. And in the end, I actually was quite happy with the background effect I created, and it added something fun and different to my entry. The next step of my process is then usually organizing the photos and figuring out my layout. Occasionally, I might have other materials I know I want to use too, like this postcard. And in this case, I decided that I would just add it in as a tip in and then glue it all down in the layout that I decide on. And the layout in this case worked out really nicely because I just did the photos in an ascending and descending order of size. And by doing so, I sort of was mimicking the act of stepping down into the Grand Canyon. And then I did, of course, go in with washi tape to attach my postcard because I wanted to use it as a tip in that you could flip open to reveal more photos and journaling. And then I used the rest of this washi tape, which is also in my Amazon storefront. It is this Morandi brand that I really enjoy using, and just created a fun little pattern. Really simple, something you can easily do. Just create a row of washi of different sizes and use it as a background effect for a bigger element or sticker. In my case, I remembered that I had these large acetate numbers in my collection and wanted to use one of them to put the date on the page, but I realized that the number 3, the color just wasn't right, and it worked out that I did have a number 8 in a color that I liked, so I just trimmed the number 8 to be a number 3 and used the green 3 as a guide to figure that out and used that on the page instead. And then another happy surprise of refinding that acetate collection was that it also had this really neat landmark icon as well. So I was able to use that on the page and basically represent in just this simple icon the fact that we went to this incredible landmark, the Grand Canyon. But more often than not, the items that I use in my travel journal are not stickers and acetate pieces or other items that I just find in a craft store. It is actual mementos from my trip and from that experience. And in this case, I had this tag on probably a shirt that I had purchased, or maybe it was a hat actually. I think it was a hat. Not that that matters, but the point is, it had a tag on it for the Grand Canyon Conservancy with all this information about the Grand Canyon. And so, even though the hat I purchased was not free, it was $18, as you saw on the back of the tag. It is a fun little free add on item that you get, and to pay attention to those little things that come with items you purchase or that you can find for free in, the front of a visitor center. They have all kinds of brochures. Just keeping your eye open for all of those opportunities. And then I did on the back of the postcard want to add in some titles for some of the photos that I have featured here, mainly because a lot of these photos are related to some of the animals that we saw, like a bighorn sheep, which was very exciting. And we saw that on the Bright Angel Trail, which actually was closed further down. And so it was nice that we were able to see some of the trail on this evening, and the sun was setting, and so it was all very magical. And I love being able to represent these little details just with a simple header to reignite your memory. And I'm using, in this case, my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen. That is one of my favorite pens to use for doing hand lettering and typically how I am adding titles to my page. And it's also worth noting, as I'm working on this postcard, that because it hangs off the side of the journal, I actually back it with, in this case, a sticker book, but you could use a regular book or a magazine. But if you ever find that have already added something to the page and now you're trying to journal or write on it, or you have an embellishment on the page under it, you may want to just slip in a piece of cardboard or a book underneath the page that you are working on, just to create an easier writing experience. As somebody who is left-handed, that is often very important for me. And so just my little pro tip for those who are struggling with doing your journaling after some of the creativity is already done. And then the final step, I think, for this page was adding in this verse from the Psalms, which is, "The earth is full of thy riches." And I wanted to add a verse from the Bible that would just really emphasize how much this was just putting God's glory on display. I mean, that's really what this experience was. And so having that verse is a great reminder to me. And then, as you saw, I added my journaling in a nice red pen to play off of that color. And then I was on to the next entry. And for this entry, part of the work was done because of the bleed through that happened from doing the previous entry. I knew that this would happen. And so when I was working on that entry and adding the background effect, you saw I added a piece of watercolor paper underneath it to protect the page on the right. But I was okay with the bleed through because I knew for this entry that I was going to be covering a lot of it with a black paper, and actually found this really fitting one in my stash with this little moon on it and some stars. And the whole point of this entry is talking about the night sky and going to this surprise event for us during our trip to the Grand Canyon was that they had this nighttime tour of the night sky where you could go to the canyon after dark, and they had these red lights set up that would lead you to this open, dark parking lot. And then all of these volunteers had their telescopes, like really impressive telescopes, there for you to be able to see different meteors or stars or the Milky Way really well. And it was actually the first time that I ever saw the rings of Saturn, which was very special. And so I did buy this postcard, which is talking about the fact that the Grand Canyon is a dark sky park, and there are only so many places in the US that are designated dark sky areas where you can still see the Milky Way. And it was very fascinating to learn about that as well, and how the commodity of a dark sky is actually something we are losing in our world, and how much we should be trying to protect our dark skies and the ability to see the stars. And I just thought that was very special. The other thing I wanted to know about this entry is you saw that I actually tore the postcard back from the front so that I could use what was written on the back of the postcard as well on the page. So that's a great tip too if you have a thicker postcard or something like that that is double-sided. Try tearing it apart into two pieces, and then you may be able to use the front and the back without having to do a tip-in scenario. And then you also saw that I added in some of the writing with my white Posca gel pen just to make it really pop, of course, on that black background. We now come to the end of our evening of journaling, and the final page I wanted to keep very simple, in part because it was getting late, and in part because it was really just an in between day, but still had so much special about it. But the point is, it was a travel day, essentially. And so I wanted to emphasize some of the amazing views that we saw on our road trip, and also the fact that we saw those views not once, but twice, because the whole point of this travel day was actually to drop off our rental car on the north rim of the Grand Canyon and then take a shuttle back to the south rim. And then the following day, we would walk from the south rim to the north rim for our rim to rim hike. And so this day was just about getting our car to our drop off location so that we could walk to it the next day. But, the beauty of a day like this is that it's a reminder that when you're traveling, even the parts that you're not excited about are turned into an adventure and a journey. And we saw these views not once, but twice on this journey, and we loved them both times. We did not mind 8 hours of driving at all out west. And I think that speaks to the beauty of traveling to new places. Regardless of what type of day you're documenting, whether a travel day or a big day, I do think this style of page is a great one to incorporate into your travel journaling. A very simple set of highlights and a photo that captures it with a little title or caption, like 4 hour drive in my case, with the date, goes a long way to still telling the story, but in a very simple and easy way. And that is the final entry I completed for this journaling session, this great time of catching up in my travel journal. I do have an entire video of my travel experience doing the rim to rim hike with my husband Ben. So if you're interested in seeing that, I will have it linked in the description. And now I'm going to turn you back to very tired Kelsey Lee as she wraps up this video. All right, that is a wrap on my journaling session this evening. I hope that you enjoyed this cozy time with me. I was pretty pleased with how productive it was. It definitely could have gone a little bit faster. I got a little bit carried away with some of the entries, especially with making a fun background effect and then needing that to dry, and then, all the photos and everything. But I'm really pleased, and I did all the journaling as well, which does take quite a bit of time. Sometimes when I'm batch doing pages, what I like to do is just do all of the design work, leaving space for me to write my journaling at the end. And then I go back and do the journaling for all of the pages at once. But that can be pretty tiring as well. So I do kind of like the model of just getting the journaling done in the moment when I finish the entry. And I'm just so pleased to have 5 total entries now finished. Not 5 days worth of my travel experience, but there are 5 more pages filled up in this journal, which feels awesome. Still lots more to do to document the Grand Canyon, but sometimes you just need to get started, and that's what this session felt like because I have been putting off doing these entries in my travel journal for so long that it just becomes overwhelming to think about. But once you get started, I find it is so much easier to pick it back up again. So now that I have those entries started, it will be all the much easier. It's late. I need to go to bed. It will just be that much easier to start the next entry in my travel journal. So, more to come, and I'm excited to eventually share with you a flip through of the finished entries. I know I still have to share a flip through of the finished Canada entries, so let me know if that is something you would like to see. And for now, that is going to be a wrap on this cozy evening of journaling. I hope that you enjoyed coming along with me. If you did, please subscribe. It really does help out my channel. I'm trying to get to 50,000 and eventually 100,000, but right now the goal is 50,000, much more manageable for the time being. So it would mean a lot to me, and give the video a like and a comment because that is how YouTube shares my videos with others. So it would mean so much to me. If you're interested in more content from me, do head over to my Patreon, or you might like this video next. So I will see you there.